Well, hello everyone, and welcome to this conversation about tending soil, an incredible program that my colleagues, Reverend Cathy and Reverend Ranwa, have been spearheading for Side with Love and the UUA. And I'm really excited today to get a chance to kind of debrief about the first iteration of what tending soil has accomplished and what tending soil looks like as we look towards 2025 and beyond. And so both Reverend Cathy and Reverend Rama, thank you for joining me today. Um, our first kind of overall introduction is what in the world is tending soil? Can you talk to us a little bit about what the program is and what inspired its creation?
Sure, I'll go. I am Reverend Cathy Rion Starr. I use they, them pronouns, and I am the Leadership Development Coordinator at Side with Love at our UUA. And a visual description, I am a pale-skinned, glasses-wearing, short-haired, genderqueer person wearing my Tending Soil t-shirt, and I am in my home office in southern Delaware with some plants and a quilt and a photograph of a protest from a long, long time ago behind me. Um, Tending Soil, which soil stands for skills, organizing, interdependence, and liberation, is our leadership development program that we ran for 6 months in 2024 with teams from about 17 congregations. That's a 2.0 leadership development for teams. Many folks have done organizing school that we did the first round in, 2020, I think. The second round for teams in, I think, 2020, 2022. And this is for folks who had done those programs, who have been involved in our work to really go a lot deeper.
Yeah, and hello everybody. I am the Reverend Ranwa Hammamy. My pronouns are they, them. I am a light brown-skinned person of Middle Eastern descent with dark brown shoulder-length hair, wearing red glasses, also wearing my Tending Soil t-shirt, black t-shirt with blue, green, and yellow lettering. And I am in my home office with my backdrop of various books that I aspire to read and justice accoutrements. And just to add, I think part of what inspired the move towards creating this program was that, with the work that Cathy and I do, I work as the Congregational Justice Organizer on the Side with Love organizing strategy team. So there is a level of overlap in sort of how we strive to skill up and ground our people doing this work in their congregations, out in the world. And so we were trying to find what is the ways in which we can bring together both the work I do with teams in congregations and like really trying to ground their organizing and the work that and skill that Cathy brings in around leadership development in particular, and bringing together folks across issue areas to really start to build people into this more robust intersectional politic that can be a fertile ground, soil, if you will, for future organizing.
Amazing. And both of you have mentioned that the program kind of emphasizes skills, organizing, interdependence, and liberation. That's what SOIL stands for. And I wonder, how did you all arrive at these four elements being central to Tending Soil's mission?
You love a good acronym, so I'll start there. And so, we were thinking about what is it that our people and us ourselves too, as organizers and as faith-rooted organizers, need and continuously need to sort of work towards and ground ourselves uh, in our organizing as Unitarian Universalists. And so we almost did sort of, and Cathy, you can correct me if I am misremembering our story because I probably am, but we were doing sort of an assessment and brainstorming. What are the things that our people are trying to develop? What are the things we think would help move people towards our sort of Side with Love theory of change and how people can become more grounded and more impactful organizers and people of faith out in the world. And so we came up with a range of different components, if you will, and found that they aligned with these very particular pieces of skills, what it means to do organizing within a sort of more broader systemic way, that interdependence element, which is one of our values as Unitarian Universalists, that emphasizes how many of these, my liberation is necessarily tied to your liberation, and then liberation. What does it actually mean to be collectively free from these broad systems that have been oppressing so many of us?
I love that. I'll add two things. One is that I learned through this process that tilling the soil is actually not good for the earth. And so Rachel Miss Libby, our climate organizer, helped us be like, yeah, no, that's not actually, we don't want to use that. And tending is such a rich word of like, how do we tend this soil? And the way we've done a lot of skills trainings at Side with Love. You can go to sidewithlove.org and look through our blog, look through our issue areas, and find all sorts of resources. And I know that I have about 20 tabs open of webinars that I want to watch that are recorded that I say I'm going to watch, and I never actually go do it. Well, I do it with like two of them. And that's true for our leaders, for y'all as well. And so Soil was not a heavily a content-based program, but a relationship and a team-based program to say, okay, yeah, we have these skills out there, but what do you need for your learning? What does your team need for its learning? Because folks did it as a team in their congregation or context of anywhere from 2 to 5 people, and a couple folks who were one person building a team through the program. And over the course of 6 months, we set goals. We then said, all right, what's your self-assessment of what do you need to skill up? Now go do that as homework, and then we'll come back and reflect on it together and learn together. And throughout the whole thing, focusing on building relationships among and between the teams, as well as with your team, in the context of what we're working towards, which is liberation. So that rather than being a like, here's content to come get to do better, this was very much a process-oriented program to get folks in relationship and then to stay in relationship and to keep building on these tools and building on this organizing plan. And that feels like an experiment that we tried with this. It's different from some of our prior programming that is exciting and generative and helpful.
Yeah. Thank you so much, both of you, for that. And part of Tending Soil, the program over the past year, I believe, has been that there was a 3-day intensive. And I just wonder if you could talk to us a little bit about what the 3-day intensive was, what it was like, and how did it contribute to participants' growth and organizational plans?
Sure. So, we had a vision of this 3-day intensive at one point that was much more elaborate and frankly labor intensive than it became. We initially had this plan of having like regional intensives where folks would come and gather in person, and we realized pretty quickly that that was not actually going to be logistically possible, that, the amount of energy that was going to be put into it wasn't actually going to bring people the grounding and the level of a relationship we were hoping to have. So in conversation with colleagues who emphasized you can do this kind of work fully online and still have the kind of relationship building and community that you feel you can only get in person, we developed something fully online as a 3-day intensive. And so we knew we wanted to have some element first of sort of grounding ourselves in place and finding a story that we can use to help sort of shape the conversations around our theology, around what it means to create, ground ourselves in imagination and building towards that future that we hope for. And so one of the key elements of that was doing a basically site visit with organizers at Stop Cop City in Atlanta, in the Atlanta area. And so working with folks that Reverend Cathy had previous relationships with around the organizing there, and developing out a story that can be shared with folks, literally having recorded site visits that demonstrated the severity of what was happening there, and allowed people to see the intersection of different issues, and then having somebody with a deep sense, understanding of theology around abolition and how that relates to our Unitarian Universalist identity and values, how that can relate to our climate justice work, how that relates to democracy. And so having this story and place ground us really helped to shape this robust intensive. And for folks who aren't familiar with Stop Cop City is an effort that happened in Atlanta and continues in Atlanta to stop the building of a huge police training facility that would be built on essentially stolen land that has a history of having been used for slave labor and enslaved prison labor. And so there has been it's years-long effort to keep this cop city from being built, and it has been undermined. That's this effort to stop this building of Cop City through while organizers have used democratic methods and processes that allegedly working with the system would end up you know, getting votes, getting the people to say we don't want this built. That has been undermined. Having people like actually interrupt and protest, that has been undermined. And so Stop Cop City has been a movement that has actually grown outside of just Atlanta since then. There are other cop cities where this kind of effort is happening. But coming back to the intensive, Cathy, I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to share about how that went.
No, I love that. I think the other thing I would add is that I never expected that we could do a 20+ hour 3-day intensive online and have folks come out more energized at the end. And we did. Because we integrated a lot of art, which sometimes we're resistant to. I can't draw, I can't do art, and folks did that and made protest art. When we brought in a movement artist from Atlanta, drew rich pictures of our vision of the future. We had one of the most in-depth theological conversations that I have had with our leaders, with the help of Jason Leiden around Stop Cop City and abolition and his Mints lectures. One of the most robust theological conversations that I have had with lay people in a long time. So there were lots of different modes that we worked in, and it was tiring, but it was so energizing too for the participants and for us as facilitators.
Wow. It sounds like such an incredible and robust 3 days of getting to know one another and getting to help refine one another as you focus on these various issues that are impacting so many of our communities. And I think kind of going deeper into this intensive, can you talk a little bit about how building relationships, fostering interdependence, this is a key goal of tending soil. How did you see participants grow in these areas throughout the program?
We had about 40-ish plus or minus participants from 13 states, something like that, from all 4 geographic regions. Most of whom didn't know each other beforehand, a handful of whom did. I mean, besides folks knowing the folks on their team. But all of whom had some experience with Side with Love. They were involved in our Green Sanctuary work. They're involved in You the Vote. They were involved in Stop Cop City. They had some connection to our work. And from there, we made sure there was time in every single session to check in with each other. We always started with like a half hour of grounding and check-in, which is about a third of our time together. So that's a significant chunk that was well worthwhile. And we did at the intensive a training on one-on-ones, which is the practice of connecting with someone for the purposes of getting to know them, for the purposes of building relationship, um, to really know what is making them tick, what lights them up, what do they bring to things. Not to be like, hey, can you do this thing for me now? But rather setting the grounding of relationship that enables deeper organizing later. And that is a foundational organizing practice that we then practiced um, throughout. So those are some of the practices in terms of like how we saw that growth and how folks applied it. Um, there's like six different things in my mind. One of them that we don't usually think about is that we really, really worked on practicing joy, which is so hard in times that call us into despair, but it's a critical, critical piece. And at one of our, we have been continued to meet monthly since the program ended for connection. So this is a piece that we're building those relationships. And at one of the ones in the fall, I had folks select whether they wanted to work on a team breakout or a like skills breakout or a sort of a spiritual grounding, how are you doing breakout. And our justice folks, like probably some of you listening here, are often really focused on like, what's the next thing? There's so much to do. We've got to do it. And that is so critical that we are there. And I was amazed when several of our folks who are usually the like, let's go, let's do this, who do amazing justice work, went into the spiritual grounding one.
Hmm.
And they spent time together and they were like, yeah, we need more joy. And so they created a group chat to share memes and gifs. And one of them taught the other one who didn't know how to do that technically. And so they created this practice of supporting one another in an interconnected way with joy because they knew that's what they needed. It gives me shivers as I'm telling that. Um, that's not often what we hear when we talk about justice work. We're like, do the one-on-ones, do this, do that. Those are really important. And so is this practice of supporting each other, especially when we're doing this in a Unitarian Universalist context of actually living, embodying the joy of our faith. It's just that's a win. That's a success, and it's really important in the times that we're in and are moving into too.
I'll just add just a little bit to that. I think part of what also helped in that is the two things. One, I think, is that Cathy and I both came in very authentically in how we were facilitating the program, very transparent, naming this is an experiment, and that we are trusting the folks in this community, this tending soil community, to journey with us and to help us shape what we are creating together. And inviting folks regularly to lean into the discomfort and of what are we doing here? Is this really worth it? And there were definitely individuals that early on I'd had one-to-one conversations with, like, I don't know if I should stay in this program. I'm like, give it one more week. Just give it one more week. And at the end, they were like, this shaped, like completely reshaped what I was thinking about for the justice work I do in my congregation. And so the element of coming in and being like transparent facilitators and just, genuinely wanting to be in community with this group of incredible creators, co-conspirators in making love happen in the world, was a big part of it. And then I think also the fact that we created a pretty consistent container across all of our sessions so that when we did invite folks into learning new ideas or engaging in some of these more challenging conversations or experimenting with frameworks, that there was a space that felt familiar enough, that a community that they felt they had those relationships with, that they could take those risks and enter into those experimental places with us.
Amazing. And you've already talked a little bit about kind of some of the campaigns and that you connected folks to through Tending Soil, but how did Tending Soil incorporate abolition and intersectionality into its curriculum? and connect people to campaigns like you said, Stop Cop City, You the Vote. And what outcomes have emerged from these engagements?
All right, that was like four questions in one. What was
Sorry.
that? Um, campaigns around abolitions and liberation. Was that the first one?
Yeah, how do you incorporate abolition and intersectionality into the curriculum?
Um, it's hard and it's easy at the same time. That's the first thing that I would say. And we chose, as Ron was saying earlier, to really focus the intensive on this case study of Stop Cop City because intersectionality is this thing that's out there. But when we look at the land in the Willani Forest, that was, as Ron said, once a plantation, it was later then a prison. It is now one of the biggest, well, has been until it's been built, one of the biggest green spaces that is also what is it, 85 million, $100 million is going to build it from the city's budget. That's not going to sidewalks, that's not going to mental health care, that's not going to schools. um, where you have democracy being denied is such a, it makes plain how everything is connected. And by embodying that and looking at it and talking about it in lots of different ways, we helped shift things. So, as Ranwa said, we did the site visit where Reverend Jonathan Rogers took a video of himself walking through and took a video of himself when the police were questioning why he was walking on this public property outside of the construction site. We had a deep theological conversation. We did it with art because it's not, that's part of the intersectionality too, is that it's our bodies, it's our brains, it's our hearts, and it's not a one-time thing. um, so we need to keep both envisioning the future that we're going to see. That's where we did the, I'm pointing, my hand's going off. um, and envision what a thriving community could look like. And as Nicole Presley, our department lead, says, nobody ever draws a rich picture of your future that has jails in it or that has police in it. We draw pictures of trees and people and music and beauty. And we need to hold that vision while also working towards it. That's, I'm still working on this process too in terms of transparent facilitation. It's not my most articulate around like how do we get to abolition and intersectionality. Ron, I don't know if there's more you want to add there.
I mean, I think it helped that, again, because this was a program where we were inviting folks that had been engaged in some level of Side with Love issues or campaigns that Side with Love has been a part of. There were folks that I think to some degree had a base level understanding that there is a there's something's not right with the world. And so there was a level of folks that came in already with some of that, which I think absolutely helped us to then invite folks into some of those deeper conversations of these elements that we have been told are what keep us safe are actually what keep us unsafe and disconnected from each other. And so I think that there has been um, even just folks just learning what Stop Cop City was. Not everybody actually knew what that was. I think helped people understand that, oh, these distinct campaigns that are described as being one thing only, understanding that it's a much more intersectional, like cross issue, if you want to use that language, uh, effort that really is about how do we all get free from these practices that are keeping all of us oppressed, I think is something that has been helpful. And I think that Kathy, you're talking about like the really deep theological conversations that folks were having as part of the intensive. I think that was really important too. Like this was a Unitarian Universalist program. We were grounded in our Unitarian Universalism. And I think that that was a huge part of why and how folks shifted because we were doing this as a UU organizing program.
Well, thank you both for sharing a bit about that. And I kind of want to zoom over to Tending Soil's fundraising model. And your model was rooted in congregational contributions. How did that support the program's sustainability, and what metrics of success are being used to evaluate the impact and to shape the future of Tending Soil?
I'll start this one. Um, we asked for congregational teams to collect, fundraise, um, organize $5 per member of the congregation. Not so if you have a team of 3 people, that's not $15. It's if you have a 100-person congregation, then $500, so $5 per member. So that made it sort of a graduated scale for folks. And the reasoning behind that is partly that these things cost money and we need to fund it. It is also, and probably equally, that organizing money is a critical skill to organizing people, organizing campaigns, to moving social justice. And part of it is also about de-siloing, that if tending soil was happening over here with these 3 or 6 people and not in any relationship with the board, with the minister, with the leadership development team, with the membership team, then it's not actually going to be, that team is not going to be successful. That team needs to be in relationship with the broader congregation and have a two-way conversation about what's happening. And by putting a commitment of money to this, it required those conversations and that work to be happening. And it did. We had folks, some folks did a share the plate, some folks used their social justice operating budget or increased it, some folks went directly to the board, some folks, a lot of folks, donated some of their own money and some from the congregation. There were lots and lots of different ways folks met it. Some folks exceeded it, some folks didn't meet it. We were all over the map. Everybody, not everybody, a lot of our folks were like, I can't do that at the beginning. And we said, that's okay, because we're going to support you to do this. And this isn't just about funding the program. That's very helpful. We do need that. It's also about, this is part of the skill that we are trying to help you to build. In terms of metrics of success, we have not fully evaluated it yet, because our main metric, our specific metrics of success are about, did this strengthen teams so that they are doing effective work on campaigns in their local community 6 months to a year out. We're not quite at that 6-year mark, but we know the program was well received by the evaluations we did of every session. Not every session was awesome, that's okay. But was it successful? We don't know yet, because did it have staying power is the question. Does this have a long-term impact is the question, and we're going to start looking at that in the next few months. What did I miss, Ranwa?
No, I think you covered most of that again, and transparently, I'll say that Cathy really spearheaded much of the fundraising work and support on Tending Soil. I think one of the things that also probably helped in help moving folks and not not having them feel like they were unsupported in that work is that we provided them with content and like, how do you make the ask around this? And so, um, uh, there were resources that were provided for folks to specifically for that particular element of how do you make a financial ask? And I think part of the piece of why it was so important to have folks make this ask too is that we're looking, at least in my personal agenda, I will say, and I'm sure it's probably Cathy's too, is that there's an element of congregational transformation that comes in when you get multiple aspects of the congregation buying in, literally, in this case, into a justice program like this. That the congregation, it's as a whole, is now invested in this this level of development and this reshaping or development of their organizing work in their local community. And so, yeah, I think TBD around what the long-standing impact of that is going to be, but yeah, I'm hopeful based on sort of where the conversations have been in the last just in the last few months.
Mm. Yeah, well, thank you both, Reverend Cathy and Reverend Rama, for sharing the vision and impact of tending soil. I think the program's focus of skills, organizing, interdependence, and liberation is clearly equipping participants to create meaningful change in their communities. You've talked a bit today about transformative workshops to building relationships and engaging in justice campaigns like Stop Cop City and You the Vote. It's so clear that tending soil is fostering action and connection. And so, for those who have been inspired or interested in tending soil from this conversation, if someone is curious about participating in a program, what would you tell them? How can they get involved?
We're both looking at each other like, who's going to answer this one first? My immediate answer is it feels very, salesman-y, but stay tuned for more. Part of what we are trying to do with this program is really evaluate its longstanding impact, and we are sharing it out like with this interview, with sharing it out with our broader UUA staff. And I think for folks who are interested in participating in something like this, also reach out, start, engaging in some of our Side with Love programming. Part of what made this impactful in the way that it was we were working with folks who we built a relationship with. And so we want to be in relationship with you. We want to be able to offer this kind of deep relationship and analysis and development and dreaming and scheming and creating. We want to do this. And so we can only know who wants to do it with us if they reach out and let us know. And so, be a part of the pieces of what we are creating at Side with Love. Is what I would say, maybe. And stay tuned. We have dreams and schemes about how this could look down the road. Cathy, anything else?
I'm gonna get specific because that's the way my brain works. Um, Build yourself a team. Find two or three other people in your congregation, or talk to your regional congregational life regional staff person about a cluster if you don't have one. Get 3 to 5 people together. And if you haven't done organizing school for teams that we ran in 2022, it's all online. You can go to sidewithlove.org and you can pick yourself 6 dates. You can hit play on the video. You can do the activities with your group and you can level yourselves up. We are in a time where relationships and connection and local community is all the more critical. And you right now can build some people together and do some of those pieces that are prerequisites for tending soil whenever we run it again or some other version of it. You right now can go pick out one of our skill ups or other webinars on sidewithlove.org and pick a Sunday to after church say we're gonna watch this together and talk about it. Most of our stuff has breakouts and you can pause it in that time and do that together. So this stuff is there for you to access right now to support and resource what you are doing in your local context. Don't do it alone. And if you don't have people and you need help finding people or you want community, then come join us. Come in our Slack. Get on the Side with Love email list. It's all at sidewithlove.org. And we need each other. We need liberation. We can do it together.
Well, thank you both, and thank all of you for joining us in this inspiring conversation to learn about tending soil. Programs like this remind us of the power of collective action, interdependence, and our commitment to justice. So, as you've heard, if you're inspired and want to get involved, visit sidewithlove.org to explore the many ways that Side with Love is working to foster liberation and love in communities everywhere. Let's keep growing together, and we'll see you next time.